I was standing in the wellness aisle of the grocery store the other day, and I was just staring at this wall of little brown glass bottles, you know the ones I'm talking
Oh,
about,
yeah.
with rubber dropper caps and usually a really minimalist label promising better sleep or, immune support.
Tinctures. They have absolutely taken over the shelf space.
They really have. And I realized I have these in my own bathroom cabinet. I use them, but I have like zero idea how they got there. In my head, I have this very romantic image. I'm picturing like a peaceful garden, maybe someone picking leaves at dawn, gently soaking them in a mason jar on a sunny windowsill. It feels very rustic.
That is a beautiful image. It is also, for the vast majority of products you buy, completely fictional.
I had a feeling you were going to ruin my cottagecore fantasy.
Okay.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but if we're talking about regulated, shelf-stable, consistent products, the reality is almost the complete opposite of that. It's industrial.
Right. It involves high-speed global logistics, intense analytical chemistry, and some frankly stressful deadlines. It's not a kitchen recipe, it's a manufacturing protocol.
Well, that is exactly what we are digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into the world of turnkey manufacturing. We've got this huge stack of documentation here from a company called Superior Supplement Manufacturing, SSMFG for short.
They're a huge player.
A huge player. And their internal guides basically rip the lid off what it actually takes to get that liquid into that little bottle.
And we aren't just talking about mixing ingredients. The documents really highlight a process that's a collision of agriculture and industrial chemistry.
So the mission for this deep dive is to decode that process. We're going to walk through the strict 6-step procedure they use. We're going to look at the actual science of why liquid chemistry is surprisingly tricky and the business chaos that happens behind the scenes. Yeah. But apparently, making a tincture is a literal race against time.
It absolutely is. I mean, you're dealing with biological matter. It starts decaying the moment you harvest it. You are fighting entropy from minute one.
Okay, before we get into the race against the clock, let's start at square one. What exactly is a tincture? Because I feel like that word gets thrown around a lot.
It does. Strictly speaking, in this context, a tincture is a liquid extract.
Okay.
You're taking a raw material, a plant, an herb, a root, something like that, and you are using a solvent to pull the active compounds out of that solid material and into a liquid solution.
Okay. But why go through all that trouble? I mean, according to the source material, why are brands so obsessed with liquid form? Why not just grind the plant up, stuff it in a capsule, and call it a day? Seems way easier.
It is easier to make pills. But the manufacturing guide highlights a few key advantages for liquids. The first, and maybe the most important for the person taking it, is absorption.
Right, getting it into your system faster.
Yeah, exactly. When you take a dry pill, your body has a job to do. It has to break that solid down, dissolve the casing, hydrate the powder, all before your system can even begin to access the ingredients.
That's a lot of work.
A liquid extract is already in a state that the body can just assimilate immediately. It bypasses that whole breakdown phase.
That makes sense. It's kind of pre-digested in a way.
In a way, yeah. The source also notes that extraction can be more potent.
How so?
Well, with a dry powder capsule, you often just have the raw plant matter. That includes a lot of fiber, cellulose, and inert stuff you don't really need. Extraction isolates and concentrates the active compounds. You're getting the signal without all the noise.
Plus, and I say this as someone who hates those giant horse pill vitamins, some people just hate swallowing capsules.
Oh, convenience is a huge factor. But from a manufacturing perspective, liquids also allow for really unique formulations. You can blend things in ways that are just physically harder to do with solids.
But, and this was a big but in the
A
document,
huge however.
liquid chemistry is not forgiving. This is the part that surprised me. I assumed if you had a liquid base, you could just throw whatever you want into it.
Right. And you just can't. You can't simply mix water-soluble and oil-soluble ingredients together and expect them to play nice. It's the classic salad dressing problem.
Whoa.
If you try to put a fat-soluble vitamin like vitamin E or D into a water base without a carrier oil, it's going to separate. It'll look terrible, and the dosing will be all over the place.
So one dropper might be all water, the next is pure vitamin.
Exactly. So if you've got a water-soluble ingredient...
You need a water, glycerin, or alcohol base.
Right. And if it's oil-soluble...
A carrier oil.
Yep. And the documents also mention a physical limit saturation. There's only so much powdered raw material you can dissolve into a liquid before it just stops. It becomes sludge.
So it's not a recipe, it's a chemistry equation.
Precisely. And if you get that equation wrong, the product fails stability testing and you are back at square one.
Okay, let's get into the action. The source outlines this very specific 6-step manufacturing procedure. And looking at step 1, it seems like the clock starts ticking the second the truck pulls up.
Step 1 is cleaning. And it sounds boring, but you have to remember these ingredients are coming from a field.
Right, they're dirty.
They have dirt, bugs, maybe rocks. The source emphasizes that before anything else happens, all foreign contaminants have to be removed. You can't extract purity from a dirty source.
And once it's clean, we move to step 2. This is where the white coats come in, the analysis phase.
This is the lab phase, and this is where the difference between your kitchen and a GMP-certified facility becomes very, very clear. They are testing it at a molecular level.
Okay, I have to admit I got a little lost in the alphabet soup here. We've got HPLC, GC, TLC. Can you break down what they're actually doing?
Sure. They're all forms of chromatography, which is basically just a technique to separate a mixture and see exactly what's inside. But they're used for different types of compounds.
Okay, so let's start with HPLC, high-performance liquid chromatography. The guide calls this the obvious choice. Why?
It's the choice for natural products with complex molecular structures, but specifically for things that are thermally unstable.
Thermally unstable. What does that mean?
It means heat would destroy them.
Oh.
If you have a delicate herb where the active compound breaks down when it gets hot, you can't use a test that involves heating it up. HPLC uses pressure and liquid to separate molecules without cooking them.
Okay, that makes total sense. You don't want to destroy the thing you're trying to measure.
Yeah.
But then they also list GC gas chromatography.
Right. GC does involve vaporizing the sample. It's fantastic for analyzing organic mixtures, especially for volatile compounds.
Oh, no, it's how,
like essential oils or terpenes.
Right.
If you want to know exactly how much of a specific essential oil is in there, GC is often the go-to.
And TLC.
Thin layer chromatography. A bit older, but it's a proven, fast method. It gives you a kind of visual fingerprint. The point is, they don't guess. They have a molecular map of the batch before they even start.
Which brings us to step 3, the brew itself. The extracting agent. Now, this is where I feel like there's a conflict with modern marketing. I see alcohol-free on labels everywhere, but the manufacturer is pretty emphatic here that alcohol, specifically ethanol, is actually superior.
From a chemistry standpoint, yes. Ethanol is the gold standard.
Why?
It serves a dual purpose that water just can't match. First, it's an incredible solvent. The source explains that ethanol is amphiphilic.
Whoa, what's that?
It means it absorbs both water-soluble and fat-soluble substances from the plant cells.
Oh, okay.
Water is polar. It only grabs water-soluble things. If you just use water, you're leaving a lot of the good stuff behind, trapped in the plant.
So you're getting a fuller spectrum with ethanol.
Exactly. And the second purpose is preservation. Ethanol kills bacteria, so you're extracting the maximum amount of goodness and ensuring the product doesn't go bad on the shelf. With just water, you've got a microbiology problem almost immediately.
Got it. Okay, so clean plants, tested plants, ethanol. Now we hit step 4, processing. And this is where I get stressed out just reading it. The 24-hour rule.
This is critical. The source says that typically once plants are delivered, they must be processed within 24 hours.
That is an incredibly tight window for a factory. What if the truck is late?
You don't have a choice. As soon as a plant is harvested, it starts to degrade. Enzymes start breaking down the active compounds. Oxidation sets in. If you let that pile of herbs sit there for a week, you're making compost, not a supplement.
They did mention exceptions, right? It's not always 24 hours.
Rarely. They can extend it to 48 hours for long-distance transport, but that requires additional controls, which probably means refrigeration.
Okay, so assuming they beat the clock, what happens?
They crush the fresh plants and move them into these massive 1,000-liter containers or even larger tanks. They add the water and alcohol, and this creates what they call the macerate.
Macerate. Sounds like something you'd do to fruit for a pie.
It's a similar idea, but way more precise. The source mentions that R&D departments spend a long time figuring out the frequency and duration of agitation.
Agitation.
Yeah.
So just shaking the tank.
Shaking, stirring, vibrating. They have to figure out exactly how hard to shake that tank and for how long to get the perfect extraction. If you shake it too hard, you might get bitter tannins, not enough, and you leave the good stuff behind.
So you have this huge tank of boozy plant soup shaking away. Then what? Step 5?
Separation. They press the liquid out. That liquid becomes the tincture. But then you're left with this giant mass of solid plant residue.
The source had a name for this, the mark.
Correct.
The mark. I found this part fascinating because manufacturing waste is usually just waste.
Yeah.
But they have a whole plan for it.
Right. It touches on sustainability. You can't just throw tons of alcohol-soaked plants into a landfill. The source says they recycle it, they compost it with mushroom or horse manure to make fertilizer.
Or even energy, right?
Yes, sometimes it's sent to a biogas facility to generate power. The plant gives the medicine, and the leftovers fuel the next crop.
And finally, step 6. We've got the liquid. The mark is off becoming fertilizer. Now we just have to get it into the bottle.
Filling and packaging. And again, it's all about control. Checking fill levels, labels, and they specifically mention why the dropper is the preferred cap.
I assumed it was just for the look, the apothecary vibe.
That helps sales, I'm sure. But it's really about accuracy. A tincture is potent. You don't want to just take a swig of it. A dropper allows for precise delivery of small amounts. It's a dosing mechanism.
Okay, so that's the journey. But let's pivot to the business side, because the source keeps using this term turnkey. What does that actually mean for someone who wants to start a supplement brand?
Turnkey basically means we handle the headache.
Huh.
No, really. Think about it. If you're a brand owner, do you want to source the bottle from China, the herb from Peru, the alcohol from a distillery, deal with import taxes, FDA regulations?
Absolutely not. That sounds like a complete nightmare.
Exactly. A turnkey manufacturer takes your concept, I want a sleep drop, and handles the entire supply chain until it's a finished product. You just turn the key.
But looking at the numbers here, this is not for the faint of heart.
Not at all. Did you see the MOQ?
The minimum order quantity, yes, 5,000 units.
Or 100 gallons in bulk. That is a huge financial commitment. This is industrial scale. If you mess up a batch of 5,000 units, that could be a business-ending mistake.
And the testimonials were really revealing. I usually skim them, but these showed what can go wrong.
They were very telling. Paints a picture of a pretty chaotic industry behind the scenes.
There was one from a guy named Cameron Andrade. He talked about a supply chain nightmare. Apparently, poor crop growth caused a huge delay.
That's the reality of working with natural products. It's farming. Sometimes the crops just don't grow. But notice what he praised the manufacturer for.
Yeah, it wasn't that they made plants magically grow.
No.
It was the hustle. He said they were calling suppliers day and night to find a replacement.
Right, and that's the value of a large turnkey partner. They have a Rolodex. If Farm A fails, they have Farm B, C, and D on speed dial.
Speaking of speed dial, another review mentioned an account executive named Phil. Phil seems to be a legend at this company.
Phil came up multiple times.
He did. And the recurring theme was communication. They say their account executives don't just guide you through problems, they solve them.
And that human element is crucial when you're dealing with things machines can't fix, like the smell problem.
Oh, we have to talk about the smell. I loved the honesty in the FAQ section.
It was refreshingly blunt.
The question was, what techniques can you provide to reduce foul-smelling ingredients? And the answer was basically, it's hard.
Asked to speak to an account executive, which is code for good luck.
Why is it so hard? Can't they just add more flavor?
Well, if you're extracting a pungent herb-like valerian root, which famously smells like gym socks into alcohol, it's going to smell like that. They say natural flavoring can help, but it's limited. You can't always mask nature.
Same with the color, right?
Exactly. The FAQ mentions it's fairly difficult to get a clear liquid. If you extract a green leaf, the liquid will be green or brown. That's just the chemistry.
It's funny, we say we want natural products, but then we want them to look like clear water and smell like candy.
And that is the tension these manufacturers live in. Delivering a natural product that meets consumer expectations of being pleasant to take without diluting it so much, it becomes useless.
Before we wrap up, I just want to list off the certifications mentioned, because these acronyms matter.
Absolutely. They list GMP good manufacturing practices, NSF, NPA, TGA, SQF, USDA organic, kosher, and halal.
That is a lot of paperwork.
It's a lot of audits, but it ensures that what's on the label is actually in the bottle.
So let's unpack this. What does all this mean for the person listening right now who just takes their vitamin D drops in the morning?
I think it just changes the perception of value. When you hold that little bottle, you aren't holding a simple home remedy. You're holding the end result of a global supply chain, a 24-hour race against degradation, high-performance chromatography.
And a 1,000-liter tank of ethanol vibrating at a specific frequency.
And a guy named Phil on the phone at 2 a.m. trying to find replacement crops. Do not forget Phil.
Never forget Phil. It really is a fascinating blend of the old world growing plants and the new world of high-tech manufacturing.
And it highlights that safety isn't accidental, it's engineered. The cleaning step alone is something you just can't guarantee in an unregulated setting.
So next time you squeeze that dropper, maybe give a little nod to the mark that got composted to get you there.
And the chemistry that kept it stable.
Exactly. That is a wrap on our deep dive into the world of tincture manufacturing. It's messy, it's fast, and it's surprisingly scientific.
Indeed.
Here is a thought to leave you with. We live in a world obsessed with natural wellness. But as we just learned, consistent safety and potency require industrial-grade chemistry. Does knowing about the ethanol extraction and the alphabet soup of lab tests change how you view your morning health routine? Are we looking for nature, or are we actually looking for nature enhanced by industry?
That is the question.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Stay curious.